Beloved keepers of the flame, the tertiary manifestations themselves contain the key to an understanding of life processes. This key is sadly lacking in the consciousness of many who have not been privileged to study in the mystery schools or to have vouchsafed unto them that knowledge which would have enabled them to better understand the problems of this age. We come to you then this afternoon in order to bring to you a better awareness of the problems of the world. The life waves and evolutions upon this planetary body are not, as some men imagine, the products of this planetary orb. Many of them come from evolutions afar, and in the vast marts of cosmos, they are conveyed here for specific purposes of learning and instruction. In other cases, they were brought here as an act of mercy at a time when the multitudes did express a greater degree of Christ's comprehension and a greater manifestation of love and golden age service. During that time, when the earth itself became the host of those laggard races embodying upon the planetary body, it was with the profound hope that mankind, by their good example, could set before these laggards a better picture of life as God intended, producing in them that response which the masters of wisdom hoped for. But the unpredictability of human nature brought about a strange turn of events, for the individuals that came and descended to the host star, Terra, your world, found instead that the laggards, with their advanced principles of science and their certain ideas of hedonism, their understanding of material enjoyment was communicated to the advancing angelic races embodied upon the planet, and a corruption ensued of them rather than the perfectionment of the laggards, as was the divine plan intended. This is known to many of you, but not to all. And therefore we reiterate it this afternoon, that you may have a greater measure of comprehension of those events that now conspire in the world forum to produce the strange scenes now in evidence everywhere. We wish to call your attention then to the fact that this is only one event in the long and turbulent history of earth. For this beautiful star, ensouled by those magnificent god beings, Virgo and Pelur, as twin flames ensouling the planetary body, is garlanded with the hope and majesty of the Divine One, who perceived in the moment of separation, when light and darkness separated, that he would be able to create here, as on other systems of worlds, a place of refuge for the souls that he wished to place here, so that they might come to a maturity of consciousness and be able to shine as exalting examples in the world, manifesting the fullness of the light of God that never fails. But it was not so, and shadow and pain and destruction were brought about by a misuse of energy. Today, then, current events are a reflection of past ones, and I wish to make it clear that the future is actually being produced by that which is occurring today. Vast segments of the populace live in almost abysmal ignorance. They understand how to read and write, to speak languages and learn skills, but very little of human relationships and the science thereof. Psychology itself, which is taught so readily in the universities and is supposed to be communicated to mankind as a better means of understanding himself, has become a tool effective in the hands of those who desire to control the masses, whereby they are able to subjugate vast numbers of the people of earth under their thumb literally, and produce the very opposite quality of freedom in the world. You then, whose hearts hunger for freedom, who desire to exalt the banner of freedom for all ages, will understand that the economic levels in the world are also levels where control of the minds of men is sought as the desired manifestation. All of this for the sake of aggrandizement. All of this for the sake of the gathering together of wealth and the accumulation and accrual of that wealth to the individual names of those who seek the control of men for their own nefarious purposes. What you call the free enterprise system is itself placed in jeopardy because of the wrath that is engendered by these who seek to actually wreak destruction upon others in order to produce a profound income for themselves. Yet, as we gaze upon the karmic records and see from time to time how much of evil is being produced by these events, we recognize full well that mankind ought to heed better the laws of the Golden Rule, which are expressed in part in American and English jurisprudence and in many of the other systems of justice throughout the world. Yet in the world, great injustice does from time to time invade the systems that present the appearance of righteousness, and even your own beloved America has found that it is indeed a harbinger of bad example to the world in the recent Supreme Court decisions affecting the outgrowth of true laws as a commodity of justice placed amongst the people as a protection from one to another. Justice is something to be desired, for when justice is upheld, the law is upheld. And when the law is upheld, it produces the fruitage of Christ consciousness in individuals who perceive in their use of the law a sense of new responsibility toward all people, including themselves. We then today, as we come to you with a passion for freedom burning in our heart as never before, are convinced that you yourselves have some degree of miraculous awareness of the fact that all is not right with the world. We are sure that you believe that all is right with God in his heaven, but we are equally sure that you realize and recognize that all is not right with the world. In fact, more is wrong with the world today than ever before in the history of man, and yet a greater measure of mercy, as evidenced by your beloved Kuan statements of last evening, exists in the world of form. For now we have the grossness of accumulated population pools, great reserves of people power throughout the world, with little understanding of how to employ them adroitly on behalf of the golden age which men seek to bring into manifestation when they understand the laws of God. We are able to look back upon the backdrop of the past and to perceive the early beginnings of our spiritual endeavors on behalf of mankind. We understand the moments when the Theosophical Society first received the impetus of divine grace in part, and we look with great lament upon the frightful abortions and distortions now entering into the consciousness of some of those bookish individuals who seek to find in the spirit of the past the power of the future. And we are also concerned with the awful activities of Krishnamurti as he has sought to subvert vast areas of the world because the forces of darkness have dispelled in him his original concepts of Christ's truth and the presence of Lord Maitreya in his world. We wish to call your attention then to the fact that the false prophets have gone out into the world of form, and many unruly and vain talkers do indeed go forth in various places seeking to subvert whole houses unto themselves. Those who understand the universal law will perceive that the Christ consciousness is the readiness for every man for the kingdom of heaven. For the Christ consciousness teaches every man that to wear the crown of freedom, he must also bestow the gift of freedom upon all whom he meets. This is not license to wrought destruction in life, but it is the power and authority to creatively understand man's function within his own domain, his place in the electronic stream of manifestation, and his responsibility toward others whom he comes in contact with. The literal rubbing of shoulders of those discordant individuals who are always dissatisfied with everything, with those who are seeking to find transcendentalism, produces the friction in the world that you currently see. And this friction becomes a very real activity of destruction that threatens the very underpinnings of this nation, America, so beloved of the ascended masters in its pristine concepts of Christ's purity. The power to exalt all nations was given to America as the greatest commodity that America could ever export to the world. And yet today we have seen where the merchants of Babylon in your midst have sought to make merchandise of others throughout the world, who have also a like idea about America, and therefore all go out with their idea of hacking off a pound of flesh from their neighbor and this results consequentially in a continuation of those wars which feed the energies of the false hierarchy and assure the perpetuation of the astral hordes upon this planetary body. The astral hordes would of themselves lose their lives and become castaways from that divine identity which they long ago spurned, because the law itself would withdraw their energy from them as it has done so, except that they are able to spread abroad the power of wickedness in the world. And as they spread abroad the power of wickedness in the world and turn brother against brother, they assure themselves of a continual supply of mankind's energy, expended as he seeks to turn himself against one unholy cause after another, which seeks to produce wars in the world as well as personal disputes, all in the name of feeding the false hierarchy with the psychic energy of those individuals who are actually tapped then by those vampire forces which seek to control men. We then come to you today to tell you that the day is indeed short, and we know not the day ourselves or the hour, when the very elements themselves may rebel against all that man has imposed upon them. We have seen how that the pinnacle of mercy, mounted by your own ascended Lady Master Kuan, together with the karmic board, has again and again averted catastrophe from the earth, all in the hope that somehow or other those individuals who actually recognize the power of the Spirit to preserve order and decency amongst mankind is the power to actually produce the golden age miracle of that divine remnant which is upon the planetary body, and call forth from the masses the response that was stated long ago by your beloved Jesus: go ye out into the highways and byways and compel them to come in. For the bridegroom of heaven, the symbol of white knight righteousness, the riding forth of the word of God, the enshrinement of truth, is the precept which must be enshrined in every life. And everyone that lives according to that precept helps the causes of freedom, and everyone that lives against that precept, whether or not they realize it, is tearing down the very banner of freedom by their act and trampling it in the dust. There are amongst you then this day those who espouse these causes, who uphold our name by their lips, but in their hearts at the moment of challenge are the quickest to bring rebuke and calumny into manifestation against one another, and spread discord amongst the brethren by pursuing the vile concepts of human gossip. We have again and again spoken out against this, and we hope that you are able to discern the difference between that which is called gossip and that which is called discernment of the Spirit, whereby individuals are able to perceive how they themselves can walk in the world, and how they can recognize their enemy, the forces of darkness that seek to employ all parts of life from time to time, and no one escapes it. But we are concerned that you will understand that your refuge is in the violet transmuting flame, in the ascended master consciousness, in the power and presence of life from the heart of your own holy Christ self, and in the victory which your own beloved victory holds for you inviolate in the heavens. The power over death, the power over mortality, is secured to mankind by immortality, and the age itself is not able to produce the miracle of immortality except that men receive it from those divine hands to whom it has been entrusted as the precious secret of life. We then come to you today to tell you that the war in Vietnam that continues now is indeed a problem to mankind, but it is no more of a problem than any other war that has ever plagued mankind. And the commitments of the treaties which you have entered into were themselves intended to implement the bulwarks of freedom in the world. And if you wish to cease that war, according to the ministrations of the people of America and the leaders of America, then do so by all means. But be careful that this is not merely a retreat where you will find yourself fighting with even worse odds against you for the cause of freedom, under such a condition as to produce utter destruction in the world for the forces of democracy. We then, who abhor war ourselves and are completely against all forms of human vacillation, understand its necessity, and from time to time have even absolved before the karmic board those who have taken life under the impulses of mass hysteria and the control of their various governments. We want you to understand then that this is a different situation than premeditated murder, where individuals actually determine to kill someone who is their enemy. Those who are caught up in the heat of battle and are driven by the forces of national governments to combat against one another are often desirous of being brothers and the shots that pass out from their muskets, the volleys that ring out on the field of battle, are to their ears the most destructive and hellish rhythms that have ever been created or sustained. I want you to know then that the great law in its mercy has in many cases helped these young men to find their freedom when they were forced against their will to do these acts. Yet there are those who say that they would retreat from the field of battle and that they would not in any way enter into battle because the words "thou shalt not kill" are set before them. I want you to know that there are other ways to kill than merely to take the physical life of a man and to stop his heart. For there are ways to kill ambition in men by destroying them by false statements against them. There are ways to kill the will to live in individuals by causing them to come to a state of feeling of worthlessness. There are ways to destroy that are very subtle indeed, and the world does not hesitate to use these subtle means of psychic psychology to destroy one another. We are concerned with the purity of Christ's regeneration then, and we are concerned because when Christ's regeneration in the world becomes the life of every man, then there will be no battles, no wars, no confusions, no abuses of those privileges which men have actually wrested from the law. We want all to understand what we are saying clearly, for we are not pitting brother against brother, but we are explaining the mysteries of how that many individuals today are forced against their will by circumstances to do things that produce for them an absolute state of abjection, a feeling of poverty, of impoverishment in consciousness, because they realize that what they are doing is not the will of God. We are concerned then to put an end to all war, not just the war in Vietnam, but all wars and preparations for wars. Yet today, recognize that those who raise their voices in protest in the streets of your cities saying, "We must have peace, peace, peace," are also applauding when the communists throughout the world win their battles and make their military preparations. They have a set of double standards which they reveal to the world, and yet the world does not seem to see them and allows them and permits them to continue to disturb this nation and other nations by those wild and raucous demonstrations which can never produce any measure of harmony or consensus of justifiable opinion. I hope then that you will realize, beloved keepers of the flame, that the power and torment of the age is being released from those rebellious Atlantean souls now currently exhibiting their strange faces in the marketplaces of life. I want you to know that the power of destruction that is in them, the power of destruction that uses them, is far greater today than that which actually took place in the French Revolution. Consider then that whereas you may not see as I do this threat, that it does require the full mounting conscription of every soul for the purposes of the light. When I say conscription, I am not referring to a temporal one, but to spiritual conscription, where we enlist in our aid and for our banner of freedom every soul who understands that freedom is not something that remains simply because it is beautiful. Freedom is something that not only must be won, but must be retained. It must be sustained. Your own beloved America, this nation itself, under God, in order to have a new birth of freedom, must keep up its sense of victory and righteousness in the land. And that which is unrighteous must be expurged from the land as it must be expurged from the hearts of its people. Victory! Victory! Victory to this land! Victory to all lands! But let it be under God's hand and under His banner and under truth and under justice. Let it not be merely a gathering together of people to fulfill their appetites, but let it be a gathering together of people under the love ray of the Almighty, under the wisdom ray to build the golden age, under the power ray to summon and conscript the strength that will assure freedom its continuity here, and that transcendental advancement which is the need of the hour, and that for which we call. Won't you join me then in raising your right hand as a torch unto God, signifying your willingness to uphold this banner not only in this age, but so long as the power of God shall fan its flame through your being. In freedom's name I say salutem to every one of you, and may that love that you cherish in your hearts for freedom be a flame to burn out the sloth and the darkness and the ignorance of the world, and bring to the world that spiritual education that will destroy all that separates brother from brother, heart from heart, and man from man, so that God's work may be indeed excellently preserved among men, and his kingdom speedily usher in the fruit of the golden age. I thank you.
Beloved Kuan, we welcome you. Beloved Goddess of mercy, we wait thy coming, dear, within the stillness of our hearts. We call now to thee, protected by thy hand of mercy, while in thy presence here, make us the purity thou art. In the ancient time of Chin, a pagoda deep within, jewels rare and shining there, that each heart in splendor fair. Lovely one of the sun, re-establish thine own. Lotus flower, hear this hour, in each heart unfold thy power. Lift to God, spread abroad the magnificence of God. Wisdom flow, beauty grow, past the radiance of glow. Chinese art, make us part of the culture land thou art. Souls arise to the skies as a jeweled symbol high. The shimmering shroud, the oneness of heaven, thy blessing and power to the world now is given. Kuan Yin, through pathways so bright, on starlight descending, flows heavenly light and mercy unending. Kuan Yin, beloved Kuan Yin.
Beloved children of men, the cadences of mercy rise and fall, and the ear of the heart, attuned to meditative response, is aware of the flow of mercy into the world. through the gateway of the heart, through the avenues of the mind, through the gentleness of the spirit of life. The pulsations of mercy in God's name are amplified into the world. But the world does not always hear nor perceive the tenderness of infinite love, even as it often ignores the pastel radiance, the gentle stroke of the brush, the fragile quality of Chinese art and art form. The culture of our land, the culture of China, is a gentle, refreshing blessing, flowing without gushing, releasing harmonious cadences into the air, articulating the language of the soul to the discerning ones. The wisdom of God flows in beauteous forms into outer manifestation. Blessed are they who hear the voice of mercy and respond to it. Blessed are they who understand how that even in the midst of hostility, as the baby Moses was hidden midst the bulrushes, until raised therefrom by the loving hands of Miriam. So does the soul extract from material things the spiritual vibrations and qualities that are worthy of externalization. Mother, teach thy child. Father, draw taut the bowstring of discipline and order. Children of God upon the planetary body, heed the ministrations of the divine sense that would shepherd the soul in its hour of adversity and expand the light of 10,000 suns over the mind as though the fingers of the Christ, the carpenter of Nazareth, were to frame in the mind a new world order, born not now in Bethlehem of Judea, but born in thy heart and consciousness. If in thy heart, why not in the heart of another? Thus, frame by frame, image by image, the law is drawn forth, soul by soul, adding unto the stature of the blessed earth. For the earth is a cup. Wise are those who perceive that dominion over the earth is given to the gentle, to the merciful, to the meek. For those who give mercy shall obtain it. Those who give peace and pursue it shall live in the consciousness of peace. Those who hide from the veils of evil, that they be not surrounded or engulfed by them, shall also give the solace of gentle wisdom unto the world in their day of mourning, when they ask out of the midst of the turbulence of their being, which is the right way, the soul with unerring fingers will point upward. The precipitation of the quality of mercy is an act that, like Chinese art in its earlier days, seems a lost art among the children of men, for the crassness of the marketplaces, the seeming need of struggle, bespeak to the hearts of men of harsher things, and the gentle flowers of the Spirit, that as a garment will cover the nakedness of sinful men, seems not to be displayed in the shop windows of the world. The creases in the soul become deep and deeper. The avenues of the senses lead again and again to blind alleys of delusion. The gentle comfort of the Holy Spirit seems but a name, an idea that men mutter, their tongues rolling round the word as though it were a fable from distant lands, enchanting but delusory. What a pity! What a pity that the soul cannot open as a flower. What a pity that the soul cannot feel the shower. What a pity that the love ray forgotten is. What a pity that men cannot receive the gift of his regeneration and make it all their own. Shimmering shower of the oneness, love of heaven to atone. Blessing consecrated power, for the world is spread abroad, lifting men to God each hour, neath the blessing of the load of his love, a mighty burden shared by angels small and great. We will keep the souls unburdened for the wondrous pearly gate. Through the pathway of the air to the radiance of the stars flows the love we all do share, healing stain and cleansing Mars. On the soul the imprint lingers of the thoughts destructions wrought, but the power of God's mercy is the joy that God has brought. As you grasp then the principle of the strength of mercy, the strength of beauty, the strength of the subtle things of life, perceive that the culture and madness of the present hour but engenders in the world more strife. we would come by God's great power, stretch our hands out o'er the world, call for release of mercy's power to the nations of the world. For nations are composed of men and women and children. Nations are composed of wise and foolish virgins. Nations are composed of those who believe and those who deceive themselves. Nations are composed of aged memories, tired records, of stain, reposing, imposing blame upon the hearts of others, marring life's great principle of love and stopping virtue's powers from above from manifesting in the child hearts attuned to gentler purpose. We say then, ladies and gentlemen of heaven, the karmic board summons the children of men to perceive that they can tear the veil from the face of the world delusion and see that the beauty of God is everywhere, but nowhere more beautifully expressed than in your consciousness when the gentle caress of his hand becomes a tangible reality for you and you alone. For born out of the flame and the crystal fire mist, there is a hand appearing from on high. It is the hand of the mother of the world, the hand of sky-y love, all enveloping, all enfolding, all claiming. The mother of the world steps forth as Maitreya, knight champion, not errant, but bold, releases energy from the storehouse of heaven, energy untold before. Hear then mercy's gentle voice and perceive how that God has given you all a choice to make. A choice for heaven's own sake, a gentle choice. You are not compelled to receive this love that drops as gentle mercy from above. But it is here for the taking, for the asking, for the appropriation, for the enfoldment of the soul. Bring forth then the quality of God's reality. And in that steadfast stream of light's radiance, the purpose that dreamlike now will become more and more the firmness of the infinite hand, bestowing o'er every land the law of love. What mother's heart remains unmoved? What father's heart cannot respond? What little child cannot perceive the meaning of the word, I believe? For greater than every other gift by far is faith enveloping like a star the body and the mind. This is the love of God, the kindness of his heart, as it enfolds each atom spark of spirit fire. It endows that man and woman with their God desire to be a flame where'er they move by impulse of his love. The cadence of the flaming seraphim that coming forth from Luxor, from Serapis' heart, do teach to every one the feeling flame of mercy to impart, God's grace that adds to every one their wings, the power to be a harmless blessed thing, a soul, a spirit spark, a being from the light, a being quailing only from the law of right, and bold indeed to stand up and be counted, as you say. For God, the very God of life, in mercy's name this day has passed this way, and you have heard the quality of mercy spoken in this place, a gift of sacred fire grace. There are other women of the Spirit, towering images of old, the goddess of light, the goddess of purity, the goddess of liberty, Amazonian women, tall in spirit and in form, for the love of God has their very being then adorned, and they are his children, teachers of the race, spinning new cocoons of holy wisdom to enfold the soul that worm-like lies on couches of repose, until the broken instrument does open wide, and that which then reposes rises as a butterfly to shining, shimmering sunlight bowers, where the love of mercy and of qualities divine does produce those flowers of the Spirit that uphold every cosmic principle so bold as mercy's flame enfolds, so do other qualities spring forth. A place, a state, and consciousness is blessed. The bliss of God does set the soul to rest, no more to struggle in the sense of sin and purpose seeming vain, but now the presence of the latter rain, a shower of mercy from God's heart, enfolds each little one to start again. The call of God to avatars, unborn and living midst the dead, these see that they must eat that living bread, and eating manifest the power of the victory flame each hour over outer sets of circumstances and enclosing curtains of the dark. They must break through to perceive his spark and see it grow, expanding by the sacred fire glow, until a son is born, the hope that God does hold within his heart, the hope he seeks to everyone to impart, the character of bliss and mercy, wild like nature in her unbridled state, does frighten none who have the power to wake the presence of the shining ones in heart, to see that glow that starts spring forth in progress name. This is mercy's game. It is the game of life that you can play It will comfort you each day with purpose, not a purpose vain. Not a purpose to impart to any man any pain or blame, but to give to all some sense of worth, some sense of God's reality, new birth, new passion for the law, new passion for this mercy without flaw. Open now then, O mercy's door, and draw from out the heavenly store some quieting radiance to the world, to still the awful battle cry of human struggle, senses, destruction, mist, confusion, abyss, abysmal, dismal, darkness, dankness, lowering consciousness to vanity's repose. Release the fragrance of the rose, the soul, the shining dewdrop in its heart, the beauty of our God. To you I will impart, if you will receive it, as a drop of mercy's flame. For how can water conceal a flame? For subject to his laws, the power to interchange the elements is ours. We claim for you this power, advancing progress o'er all stoppages, obstructions, compassions of God's heart, fragments, 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 jewels that now impart as foci in thy being, emblazoned in the structure of thy bones. This is the power of mercy that atones for all that man has done through ignorance and unthinking, curling purpose, blinking, cursing darkness released by unthinking men must cease, and Christly raiment once again enfold each child from concept through precept, through law, through release, through holy awe, the birth process restored to sacred fire. As holy parents by the love ray do inspire twin flames that blaze the positive elements of old, the negative reaching forth to hold the circle of precipitate power, releasing all womankind from pain each hour and producing the miracle child, the law of ancient Qin, the law of China, and of civilizations that did win a golden age in history's page so long ago. But now we touch the gate of Akasha to bestow a glimpse of wonder and of beauty bold, when each son servant of our God of old did have a pagoda in his heart, in which he held all treasures, and proceeded to release the fragrance that as miracle did please the soul of God in everyone, and showed the glowing fragment of the sun that builded round the tower of men's hearts a civil world of obedience, of fragrance, of union, of compassion, of extemporization, of temporization, of magnification, of the flame, of mercy, of his name, of the law, of truth, the perfect proof. For as the hand of God did write within the heart the law of love and mercy, it did manifest through the culture as the threads like warp and woof went forth and flowed. A garment was spun that glowed. The virgins with the lamps went forth and saw the bridegroom coming through the dark. He cut a pathway as a falling shooting star. His was a diadem, the Son of God, who went forth to war against iniquity and stain, the product of the Holy Mother of the world, a flame. Will ye transfer this to the stamen stalk of soul flowering within thyself? Will thy spine then become a ladder celestial to the stars, where at place of skull all that mars is crucified, and the resurrection flame circles round your head in mercy's name. The continents of the air are opened wide. The virgins of the light come forth to guide the angel spirit presences from presence of the flame, from sacred sunfire center in God's name. This is mercy, qualities of old, qualities, nameless qualities to enfold, shimmering, shimmering, shimmering in the dark. They banish darkness. They start again and again the passion fire of hope in little ones who say, we have touched the hem of your garment as you pass this way. We feel the issue of thy life that flows. Our souls are healed by mercy glows. Thy heart we emulate and hold. Thy heart, O dearest Christ of old. It is the mercy of the law, the shining cherubim in awe. Upon this ark begin to once again for every son of heaven win their celestial victory. We raise the curtain on the civilizations of the past, but extend before the mind at last a newer hope for brighter days when heaven's laws do weigh the deeds of men as justice power does flow into the world this cosmic hour, bestowing from the ladies of the lamp the power to see and stamp his noble image on thy face. Oh, won't you seize it and erase the densities and frowns of all that pulls and tumbles mankind down, and see that love is God within the heart. This is the breathing flame of mercy I impart. This is our love. This is our flame. This is God within, in heaven's name. I thank you.
Beloved Zadkiel, beloved amethyst, come with your agents of light, with flame angels who stand in the heart of the flame. Who stand in the heart of the flame, hail freedom flame. Beloved Zadkiel, beloved amethyst, come with the sign of the cross of St. Francis and of St. Germain. Ye of the seventh ray, ye of the seventh ray.
Hail, sons and daughters of freedom, in God's name. I, Zadkiel, come to you this day in order to speak to you on the conformity of the Spirit. For this is the nature of God. It is the transmutative power in your octave to bring about change and the miracle of love in your world that will enable you to appreciate the subtle joys of the Spirit as you have never appreciated them before. Won't you then accept through the open door of your heart the vibratory action of our cosmic instruction? We come forth in order to bring to all mankind the buoyancy of freedom, the blessedness of escape from that blinding condition known as mortality. Do you know that the word mortality carries within it the vibratory action of death? Mort, then, referencing the death of the spirit. And this is never the purposes of life, for how could life bring forth death? You see, then, that which is known as death is the end of life, whereas it is the intention of the Father to produce immortality, even as he conveyed it with the inflowing breath that enabled man to stand and be a living soul. Will you then enter in through the feeling within your heart to the realization of immortality? Will you enter then into the feeling in your heart of the subtle beauty of the world now hidden through the veil of dense matter from the gaze of the curious and those who are embroiled in sense consciousness? We are concerned that you might understand a little more of our octave of light and be able to be persuaded of the grace of God that enables men to clean escape from the delusions of the senses and find the blessedness of the higher octaves and ever-present comfort to them in their hour of need. When we come then to speak to you, we wish that you could see the activity of light from higher octaves. Let us say that you would be able to ascend into the atmosphere, either by means of a helicopter, a balloon, or by some almost unnatural means, such as the ascension. For the ascension seems most unnatural to men, used to thinking in terms of physical objectivity. Now then, suppose that you were able to ascend to the higher octaves and see the descent of our presence into the force field of your gathering. We assure you that it would be a most illuminating experience, for you would see, first of all, the dark clouds of human thought and feeling that surround the earth plane, and you would see how that the angelic host do make their thrust, even almost as descending javelins of light down through the dense spheres of matter and human confusion. We want you to know that sometimes directly following those blessed beings that descend as the spearhead of our intent, little cherubs of violet transmuting flame come down and reveal their lovely heads and beneficent smiles to those endowed with the power to see and to witness our descent. We sometimes wish with all of our hearts that you could actually witness these events, but some of you who do not actually see them are ever so fortunate as to be able to feel the energy of our release, to feel the power and thrust of our love and the magnificent cosmic intent which is made on behalf of the ascended masters for the students of the light and their emancipation permanently from the domain of the senses. Well, blessed ones, seeing we have spoken in this vein, we wish to move onward concerning the conformity of the Spirit, and to say to you that man has now, for almost, it seems, aeons of time, conformed to materiality and the senses, and therefore the sense consciousness has actually received the attention of mankind through the decades, centuries, and millenniums of the past. We then call to your attention that it is quite natural that when individuals build a momentum of thought and feeling concerning squares, circles, triangles, and even the nebulosity of clouds, they are able, blessed ones, to continually recreate those forms with which they are familiar. But those forms which they are unfamiliar with seem to them a thing afar off and apart. And it is so essential today that mankind, who are actually searching to find a higher way of life, should be able to understand that whereas many of the art forms and designs, the crystals and art formations in nature in your world are also to be found in higher octaves, thus providing a comfort of familiarity to many of you, there are many art forms, many designs, and articles of heavenly manifestation with which you are totally unfamiliar. And we would like to have you, through the alchemy of the Spirit, through the fingers of your devotion, reach up through the appalling substance of man's delusions and obtain entree into our octave, where you could contact the subtleties of this beautiful world of light and feel the pressures of those higher octaves, that the senses would then be endowed with the power to perceive spiritual things in a more magnificent vein. We are aware of the fact that some of you have made remarkable progress in this connection, but others of you are still babes in Christ and are just beginning to even toy with the concepts of the spiritual world. Conformity to the Spirit, then, refers to the unformed, refers to the Spirit in its pure state, where all is light and beauty in the mind of God, the unformed, the uncreated. Yet here lies the power to create. Here lies the power to sustain. Here lies the power to endow with appreciation. And therefore, you are not going to find the power to actually cultivate the spiritual senses in the octaves below, for there does exist in mortal consciousness what we may call an effluvia of containment or an effluvia of calcination, which prevents the spirit from soaring through the densities of mortal creation and actually entering into the higher octaves until it has received from on high the specific endowment of Almighty God that opens up the eyes of the spiritual senses and reveals to each individual for all time the means whereby, when they have stilled the outer senses and the awful, horrific manifestations of mortal consciousness in its lower order, they are able, out of the stillness of their senses, to perceive that a higher sense does exist, whereby they can appreciate and perceive the manifestations of light from on high, and enter into that enjoyment of the angelic host and of cosmic beings. Is this not a blessed concept, I ask you? It is and ought to be, for it is a blessed concept in our octave of light, and the archangels, the archai, and the angelic host all revel, I say revel, in the joys of God as they are revealed through the avenues of spiritual discernment. One of the strange qualities of the powers of darkness is the power of distortion, whereby they distort divine ideas. Many times they actually seek to create the illusion among men that there are no forms and beautiful manifestations in the higher octaves, that God is just one great light manifestation, that there is no variety or variegation there, and no opportunity for expansion. Let them remember the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below. As below, so above. There are then some degree of similitude in that which is below to that which is above. It is the distortion of the senses of perception that vacate in mortal consciousness the reality of God. And thus individuals, without even knowing that they are doing it, through the tricks of the human consciousness and the carnal mind, are removing the delicate colorings, the beautiful manifestations of joyous response that the soul can evoke as it goes toward higher octaves and desires to separate itself from mortal sensation. Well, some individuals, listening to the powers of darkness, will say that there is nothing to be found beyond the veil, beyond death, that once they are dead, they are dead. Once consciousness has ceased to express in the brain and mind, once the heart is still, that the congealment of the blood and the actual stoppages of the systems of the physical body are a stultification to the soul. What a ridiculous statement! And yet we can understand how that mankind, gazing upon a form from which the spirit has been withdrawn, may very easily conceive that such might be true. By this means Eve was disturbed by the serpent force and did accept the consciousness that they would not surely die the day that they ate of the forbidden fruit. And thus cosmic law has ever been violated by reason. And reason, mortal reason and rationale, has provided mankind with the impetus and courage that he lacked, so that fools could indeed rush in where angels fear to tread. We then today, anxious to convey to you a more than ordinary reality, say to you that the violet fire of transmutative love is the means whereby you can know your freedom and have that compassionate intervention of the higher octaves of light that will literally flood your worlds with the greatest buoyancy and God-freedom that you have ever enjoyed in all life here below. And will provide the opening of that great cosmic doorway of magnification whereby you can understand the meaning of some that will follow. For when you are no longer confined to a sense of size form, for example, the conformity of the flesh, when you are no longer obsessed with the sensation of a physical body so many cubits in height, or having so much avoirdupois, at that instant you are able to say, well, it doesn't make any difference whether I am the size of a bumblebee or a little gnome, or whether I am as big as that cloud coming up over the horizon. You are able then to possess a consciousness outside of body form, outside of mental conformity. You are able to break the bonds, and then you can feel the softness of a flower's petal as you literally slide down the spout of infinite reality and land upon the soft petal of a flower to actually drink in the fragrances thereof. And you see that that stamen that looks so small to your mortal gaze is actually large and beautiful and carries in it many exquisite patterns which your larger vision did not allow you to appreciate. And so it is with many things. When you are able to break the bonds that hold you to the sense consciousness and sense rounds, you will find that in a blade of grass, exquisite patterns occur. And you will be able to see the little network of arteries and veins in many of these manifestations of nature, to feel the liquid flowing through these manifestations, to enter into the heart of the elementals that create and sustain these forms as God's cosmic gardeners, to realize then what it means to feel the brush of an angel's wing. Angels' wings are electronic radiation that comes forth from their garments of light. They are not actually wings, blessed ones, but they serve the same purpose. And when you feel then the touch of the electronic energies of the angelic host, you are able to say with justifiable reality, why, God passed very near, or the angels of God touched me, and I heard the whirring pass my ear. Well, blessed ones, mankind, of course, will say that perhaps you are daft and should be committed to the nearest asylum, but I do not think that those of you who actually experience this will feel the need to tell it. For it is in the telling that mankind do so often distort their divine opportunities and cause individuals to look askance at them, because this is not conformity to the world. It is unusual, because the world has its usual and normal experiences, which today are creating riptides of destructive energy as the skirts of the feminine part of the race are ever raised higher in an aborting attempt of the dark forces to continually turn the minds of men toward the wrong direction. We then of the angelic host, anxious ever to give to mankind the better part of a holy resurrection, are continually bestowing new thoughts and ideas to the earth and providing the impetus of cosmic regeneration and transmutation to change men's darkness into light, to prevent the thoughts of the insane that emanate from the asylums of the world and from the insane minds from actually going forth and poisoning the stream of mortal consciousness with all of its fanciful notions and misconceptions and horrid distortions. We want you to know then that there are barriers of light radiance that are sustained upon this planetary body by the archangels and angelic hosts. We are not always able, because of the tremendous diversification of human nonsense, its continual spread and poison among mankind, and because of the consciousness of men, to serve to plug every gap in the screen of mankind's thought and feelings. But wherever we are invited, wherever we can go, we go forth and we do our best to contain those thoughts within an envelope and prevent them from being spread abroad in the world as they are now being spread abroad. Yet we find that today, through the media of violent drugs and through aborted concepts of freedom, men are going forth today, young men and women, and destroying their very future in some vain hope that they are tapping the secrets of the universe. Plagued on one hand with doubt, and on the other with a distortion of civilization's historical mode, they are continually filled with criticism, condemnation, and judgment, while performing acts themselves that are far more evil than the acts of those whom they criticize. We then today, in this hour of peril, point out to you that it is essential that mankind have contact with higher octaves, that he be able to escape the bonds of the senses, that he be able at all times to tether himself to a reasonable reality that will enable him to return into the world of form with those common sense aspects which are the actual fruit of God for all life. For God himself manifests that common sense here below that enables men to act in wise judgment in establishing here among men those manifestations of thought and feeling which will produce a golden age world. We do this then by the power of our release, by the power of answer to your calls, by the power of upholding the torch of freedom, by the power of transmutation, and by the power of God's love, vitally concerned with mankind's activities, even while knowing that mankind are from time to time participants in satanic rituals and delusions. We think then that the mercy of God ought to be adored. We think then that the mercy of God and the cosmic host ought to be appreciated more than ever, because God has acted to serve those who have been ingrates to his purposes, ingrates to his blessings, and ingrates to those who have ministered unto them. Again and again, individuals have actually punished those who have sought to serve them. They have crucified those who have come forth to do them good, and they have fought against those who have come forth in the Master's name and service. We then say to you, fear not, but be of good cheer, for the law of God is the law of love. The law of God right here is the law of God everywhere. It is one law, the law of the one. It acts not to confuse or abuse, not to destroy or employ man wrongly, but to draw all to the right thought, the right feeling, and the right understanding of how they may tap the secrets of the universe in drawing forth God's energy for the freedom of man, knowing that the angelic host will ever comply with them in their tremendous desire to be of service to their fellow men. We want you to understand that as they have spurned the Christ, as they have spurned the angelic host, as they have denied the existence of cosmic beings, so they will deny the existence of your sanity when you take a stand for the law and for the right. But you must have the courage here below to understand that those who have gone before you upon the pathway, those who have gone before you into Jerusalem, and I speak of the New Jerusalem, have also endured these stonings, these punishments of mortal men, and they have continued to serve and continued to give even when they were spat upon and abused. You must then steel your minds and determine that you will act in the name of God for the freedom of man and the freedom of yourself in this age against the hordes of unrighteousness in their unholy gatherings throughout the planet. Resolve then here today that you yourselves shall do all that is within your power to align yourselves with our energies, to align yourselves with new perceptions, to conform to the conformity of the Spirit, to understand that out of the great white light of the great central sun there is a continual streaming forth of that reality which is your power and prerogative to translate into light in form, to translate as grace, to translate as truth, to interpret for mankind in heaven's name. Won't you then accept it? Won't you accept your freedom? Won't you accept the power of the violet flame? Won't you accept the energies of Christ in my name? Won't you accept the energies of Saint Germain? Won't you accept this holy flame and be that flame where'er you walk? My peace I give unto you. My peace I leave with you. My peace is God's peace. For heaven above is one, and heaven below will become one. I thank you.